As we are all well aware, COVID-19 and consequently the national pandemic has greatly altered the world that we live in. If we hope to one day return to the world that we used to know, it is important that we actively work to stop the spread of the virus. One way to do so is to stop the act of self-diagnosing, which then leads to the lack of testing and ultimately impedes putting an end to the spread of SARS-CoV-2. This then creates a problem because people can be asymptomatic and can unknowingly spread the virus, or people can present symptoms that they will self-diagnose as the flu. Knowing the scientific basis behind COVID-19 testing methods is an important factor to avoid self-diagnosis by encouraging people to seek getting tested if at all necessary. How exactly do COVID-19 tests work?
To begin, it is important to know the difference between direct tests and indirect tests. Direct tests immediately detect an active infection in the body, whereas indirect tests measure the presence of antibodies.
The most common type of direct test is reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, or RT-PCR. With this test, cells that are present in the back of the throat, usually cells that surface up from the lungs, are extracted through a nasal swab specimen. After collecting the specimen, the virus's ribonucleic acid, or RNA, is withdrawn if present. Using the polymerase chain reaction, the RNA is then converted into a single strand of DNA. Through recurring heating and cooling, the single strand of DNA is then replicated into millions. With the presence of millions of DNA, fluorescent dye molecules are included in order to detect the status of the virus.
The most common indirect testing method is antibody testing. What does an antibody do? When the virus is present, antibodies do three things: inactivate the virus, facilitate cells to dissolve foreign substances, and activate the complement system to destroy the virus. In an antibody test, the goal is to look for specific antibodies related to SARS-CoV-2 virus. Antibody testing is a method primarily used to determine if a person has already had the SARS-CoV-2 virus in their system, rather than a method to determine the current status of infection of the individual. In order to perform an antibody test, a blood sample must be drawn. If specific IgM and IgG antibodies from the individual's body are present, their volume will be tested. The higher the volume of antibodies present indicates a greater time between the day of test and the day of infection. A lack of antibodies in a person's blood sample reveals that the virus has not been previously active in their system. Now that we know how RT-PCR and antibody tests work, how should you decide which testing method to choose? As mentioned before, antibody testing detects the presence of antibodies that appear through the presence of virus. However, antibodies remain in the body even after the virus has left. Therefore, they are not reliable tests to detect inactive virus. If you hope to diagnose inactive virus of SARS-CoV-2, an RT-PCR test should be administered. With this information in mind, regardless of vaccination status, remember that it is crucial to approach the nearest RT-PCR testing site as soon as a person has non-specific symptoms, or when a person is aware or suspects that he or she has been exposed to somebody infected by COVID-19. It is also important to know that, although many people have not been vaccinated, one infected person is still at risk to spread the virus to those who have not been vaccinated. Therefore, the best way to avoid misdiagnosing yourself and prevent asymptomatic people from infecting others is to get tested for COVID-19 regularly. There are several testing locations for UC Davis students and employees, including Davis campus testing, Sacramento campus testing, and other communities. It is important to know that COVID-19 campus testing is only for students and employees who do not have symptoms. If you have COVID-19 symptoms, contact Student Health and Counseling Services, or your doctor or occupational health if you are a campus employee. You will be required to complete the daily symptom survey before entering the testing facility on campus. More information about testing registration can be found on this website.